Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Ryder, and this is my first YouTube video that I'm about to present to you. I am from Kanawagi, and I am a local reporter for their local newspaper, The Eastern Door. To people who don't know who I am, my profession is I'm considered the nosy newsman, but I guess you could say that the technical term that I am is a field reporter. Now, aside from my job as a field reporter for the Eastern Door, I also am a bit of a film critic, and over the past few years I have actually been making a myriad of a lot of movie reviews, and I would actually like to sort of take the time to share it with people. Feel free to leave as many comments as you like. Try your best to be polite about it. I will not have any toleration for any kind of rudeness, because if you're going to be rude to me, I will delete you. And don't think I won't, because I will. Alright, now aside from that, I would like to present to you a movie review that I had done a few years ago. I'm kind of a connoisseur of the classics, and some of the even more obscure movies that have came out. One of the movies that I'm going to be looking at is the classic 1970 movie, which was actually a spin-off to the 1967 movie In the Heat of the Night, called They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. And it stars, once again, Sidney Poitier reprising his role as Virgil Tibbs. The other co-stars, some of the big names on there include Anthony Zerbe, Martin Landau, Ed Asner, the late Barbara McNair, and so on. Alright, this was of course a spin-off of the 1967 movie In the Heat of the Night, like I just mentioned. And it sees our beloved police lieutenant, Virgil Tibbs, who has been assigned to investigate a murder which involves a prostitute who was allegedly choked to death by somebody. Some of the suspects include a preacher by the name of Logan Sharp, the landlord, who was also a bit of a pimp. His name was Rice Whedon, and Woody Garfield, played by Ed Asner, who was the prostitute's protector. Okay. Tibbs actually believes that it was Whedon who was the guilty one, because in an act of self-defense he went on and was attempting to shoot Lieutenant Tibbs, but Lieutenant Tibbs eventually got the upper hand and shot him dead. But as it turns out, Rice Whedon was not actually the guilty suspect, and in the end it turns out that the Reverend Sharp was actually the guilty one, and that he also wanted Mr. Tibbs to stall his arrest until he gives a little speech at a referendum with some kind of control issue. I'm not really quite sure, remember what it was. But because Mr. Tibbs refused his request, then the Logan Sharp decided to just give himself up by getting himself run over by a truck. He eventually committed suicide. In other words, is what I'm trying to state. Now, if solving this really difficult, cold, hard case was bad enough, there's also a little bit of a family element in this story, which I actually kind of find to be kind of absurd. It appears that 3 years after the movie In the Heat of the Night, Mr. Tibbs has now become a family man. He now has a wife and 2 kids. So now not only is solving a cold hard case bad enough, he also has to deal with family issues, including a nagging wife and a rebellious 11-year-old son. I'm going to roughly say he's about 11, 12 years old. She also, of course, complains about him working late. So that also does not really quite sit very well with the Tibbs family. And, of course, she's at her wit's end with the son, who seems like he has not a care in the world. He's got a chip on his shoulder, an attitude problem, and just totally lacks in any kind of discipline. Okay, I guess you want to know what kind of disciplinary acts he commits. Well, number one, he disobeys his father's orders to clean up his room. He physically abused his little sister, and he also was caught in the backyard with his friend doing underage smoking. One of the more, I guess you could say one of the more memorable scenes was when, after his son got caught in the act smoking, Mr. Tibbs says, okay, so if you want to smoke, alright, then let's smoke. So then he opens up a big case of cigars, and he forces his son to take a puff of the smoke. Of course, the fumes and the smell causes him to go to the bathroom and regurgitate. Alright, so that's kind of like what the plot is. I guess since I'm kind of running a little bit low on time, I'm going to sort of give my opinion about this movie. Like many sequels, this movie does not measure up to the predecessor of They Call Me Mr. Tibbs, which was In the Heat of the Night. And of course I found it to be very unsettling, and a lot of scenes were very awkward, and practically we didn't know which direction it wanted to be. Did it want it to be a crime drama, or if we want to see Mr. Tibbs as the gentle but somewhat tough family man? I don't know. I thought that the story editing was very weak. The characters are all mostly wooden, both the people who he works with and his family. And I actually thought this was just an extended, weak version of The Streets of San Francisco, which I also think was which was actually a good show. I believe Michael Douglas in his younger days was actually the executive producer. Okay, but I want to tell you that the real Achilles heel to In the Heat of the Night was that it didn't connect to the spin-off series They Call Me Mr. Tibbs. Let me explain to you. And in the heat of the night, it was revealed that Virgil Tibbs lives in Philadelphia. He is not married, and he doesn't have any children. 3 years later, he's married. He lives in San Francisco, and he has 2 children. How did that happen so fast, I ask you? And he also claims that he's had 12 years experience in the SFPD department. Also, what also didn't seem right was the coexistence of African Americans and Caucasian Americans coexisting, like as if there never was a civil rights movement. What's up with that? Okay, maybe they were just trying to, you know, like make a ploy of, I guess, to get over the whole civil rights thing. Maybe I could accept that, but the fact of the matter is, it did happen, and I don't think that when the movie was released in 1970, not everybody accepted it, or not everybody was, like, you know, adjusted to the whole situation. Also, you know, I think that the cops in the movie were portrayed as being wooden, and I don't think they were really too involved. The character, aside from Sidney Poitier, we take pity for actually going for this whole sequel spin-off. I also take pity for Ed Asner, who also seems to have come across as playing a thankless role, and the car chase involving him and Sidney Poitier were also quite awkward and pedestrian. If you want a good 1970s classic car chase, the French Connections, they had some pretty engaging car chases. And, you know, the killer's motives behind the murder of the prostitute, her name was, by the way, Joyce Sturgis, was also unjustified and very nonsensical. And, you know, what also really sored me the most was, not once did Sidney Poitier ever uttered the words, "They call me Mr. Tibbs." So there you have it. I hope this rant enlightens everyone. This is like my first time I've ever recorded something on YouTube, so, you know, bear with me. I'm not very good at public speaking, but I do hope that that I get some positive feedback from my rant, and I thank you very much for listening. This is Eric Rider, signing off.